nobody drinks ayahuasca or does iboga because it feels good.
No.
You're not. That's not the reason you do that.
It's not recreational.
Those are challenging as fuck. There are people who take, microdoses or whatever to feel better, to think outside the box. No big deal. But the peace one has through a challenging journey, that too can be something that we chase. And I certainly chased that because it was like, somebody cuts you off in traffic after an ayahuasca journey. You're just like, go ahead, brother. You truly don't give a fuck. It's not an act.
Right.
You're at peace with it. And 6 to 8 months down the road of being back in your daily habits, back with the same crew, back with the same information and all the things we consume, it wears off. And when I'd catch that, it's like, oh shit, man, I'm back. It feels like my old life. I need to go back again and re-up to get back to that state and try to hold that state longer. Mm-hmm. Not realizing I could attain that state through the work, right? Through
the daily,
yeah,
mundane,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, brother. Tell me about, any other tools that really gravitated towards you through allurement that you find, transformative for the people you work with.
In my private practice, or
well, just I mean, when the
in
practice
my
and
exploration.
The
Okay, so some of the stuff that really kind of, I did a course of study at a spot out in London that a shamanic teacher training. It was a 1-year program, and I was exploring martial art. I was exploring meditation, and then I got really curious about shamanism and what shamanism even means through Paul, the way Paul would talk about it. And so there's this woman in Los Angeles named Kate Shella who she used to teach what was called 5 rhythms, ecstatic movement, ecstatic dance. And she's such a powerful teacher and such a cool person and so authentic in what she shares. And she's a friend of mine, so I asked her about what's your course of study? What did you do? What have you been through? And she told me about this place called the Sacred Trust. It's out in the farmland, a couple hours outside of London. That's where she's from. And so just on a gut feeling, I applied, got in, and I would fly to London like 3 or 4 times a year for the full year and stay on the land there for 4 or 5 days. And we weren't using any substances. There was no medicine involved. It was drumming, breathing. We did a ritual connection with nature. All these kind of not psychedelic entry points to a psychedelic experience.
Yeah, altered states of consciousness.
Altered states of consciousness. Shamanic journeying. I would have these. I've never really talked about this, but I had some really profound kind of like dream-like experiences where I was moved to tears by the things I was seeing, meeting spiritual allies that exist, and are just waiting for you to ask them for help and developing a relationship with them. And it all seemed kind of, like I said, I'm a Catholic schoolboy from suburbs of Philly. I'm way out off reservation here. So there's always that judgment of like, where do I come from? This is weird, man. Is any of this real? But then years later, studying with Dan Brown, who was a meditation teacher, who was a bona fide lineage holder in what's called the Bon, which is like a pre-Buddhist shamanic tradition from Tibet.
Yeah, I had heard of that through Ted Achikoso. Yeah. He's an apprentice of that or studied it.
Sure. And so, but Dan was also, and this is what made him such an extraordinary, one of the things that made him such an extraordinary person. He was also, I believe, on the board at the Harvard Medical School and a practicing psychologist and professor at Harvard. So I'm like, okay, if this guy, who's way smarter than me, believes in this stuff, maybe it's not so kooky. And he would teach, practice around a premeditation routine around just contacting your guides, allies, and allow them to just do the practice for you. You don't have to have this figured out. You can just, help is available. So, yeah, I had some really profound experiences. In fact, as part of that year program, we, one of the initiations we went through was to dig our grave in the woods and spend the night in your grave.
Damn.
It was pretty intense. But, you I dug myself a proper grave in the dirt. And then, sun goes down, you put a tarp over the hole, and then first put wooden slats that you collect from the forest over the hole, then put a tarp over the hole, and then shovel the dirt back on top of the tarp, but leave a little air hole that you can just kind of shimmy into, and get in the grave. And then the teacher fills in the rest of the dirt, but there's a rock behind you so that you can breathe. And I mean, honestly, if you totally freaked out and needed to get out of the grave, you could scream loud enough that they could hear you, and then they would dig you out, but that would take a while. So you're really in a grave, and you can't just in a moment of panic, oh, I gotta get out of here. It's not gonna. It's gonna be.
That's like the darkness retreat on steroids.
It was very similar to the darkness retreat. I was on darkness retreat too, but so the practice was to go into the grave with a rattle, and speak your life story. Just speak your life story. That was the only instruction they gave. It was pretty loosely held, and so I go in there and I'm in the grave, and metta is a meditation practice around generating loving kindness. It's just a repetition of a mantra: may I be peaceful, may I be peaceful, may I be peaceful. And you can use that mantra to generate, loving kindness and peace. And so I'm in the grave and I'm just reciting, may I be peaceful internally, because I don't want to let my mind go, because I feel like this could get really scary if I just let it go. But it occurs to me what I'm actually doing. I'm holding on to this life raft of this metta phrase, and I'm in the ocean of possibility, but I'm afraid to let go. So I'm just like, all right, I gotta let go of this thing and start speaking my life story. I've never even talked about this, but at some point in speaking my life story to Mother Earth, there was this kind of figure ground reversal where Mother Earth was speaking my life story to me with my mouth, and I felt like I was listening more than I was talking. And then I have the rattle, and some songs start coming out of me, and there's just like this deep kind of healing and letting go of tension. And that went on for however long, and my body just felt so relaxed. I just melted into the dirt. And then eventually the sun comes up and they're ready to dig me out, but I could have stayed in for another couple of days. It felt like the state that you get into when you realize that you are actually held by Mother Earth. You belong here. I belong here. Every challenge I went through happened for a reason, and I'm being prepared for something, and everything is okay. And the guy who got into that grave and the guy who got out were different people for sure. It was a very profound experience for me.